إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. To proceed, all praise and glory be to Allah. We thank Him and we seek His help and His guidance and His pleasure and His forgiveness, asking Allah to protect us from the evil whispers within all of us and the evil consequences of our misdeeds. For whomever Allah guides, no one can lead astray, and whomever Allah leaves astray without guidance, none can provide, none can deliver guidance to such a person. And we testify that no one is worthy of our lives, our worship, our dedication but Allah, alone without any partners, the Almighty, true, supreme King, and that the Prophet Mohammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was indeed His Prophet and His servant and His messenger, the carrier and bearer of pure guidance and glad tidings and a warning before the coming of the hour. O people of Iman, O you who have believed, have the taqwa of Allah and say a word that reaches the mark. Allah says, say an accurate word. In exchange, Allah will rectify your deeds for you, and He will forgive for you your misdeeds, and whomever obeys Allah and His Messenger, then they have succeeded, and they have attained the truest success in doing so. To begin, we continue with our special 7, that Allah will grant His shade, the shade of His throne, on the sweltering, painful, lengthy day of Al-Qiyamah, of resurrection. Our Prophet ﷺ said to us, there are 7 whom Allah will shade under His shade, on the day when there will be no shade but His. سَبْعَةٌ يُظِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. قال إمام عادل وشاب نشأ في طاعة الله ورجل قلبه معلق في المساجد ورجلان تحابا في الله اجتمعا عليه وافترقا عليه. A just leader, a young person who spends their youthful years in devotion to Allah, a man whose heart hangs in the masjid, in the house of God, 2 that love one another for the sake of Allah, coming together on that, on His pleasure, and going their separate ways on His pleasure. And today is our appointment with the 5th of these special 7. Our Prophet ﷺ said, وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ امْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ مَنْصِبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. A man, the 5th category, a man who was invited to haram, to an illicit relationship, by a woman of mansib and jamal, a woman of great reputation and a woman of great beauty. She combined between both, although beauty gains women a reputation, and a reputation can cause someone to see a woman as very appealing and beautiful. But she had both of them combined in her. فَقَالَ, but he resisted and said, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is a man that was able to overcome the greatest challenge that a man is posed with in his life. That a grown man, a youth onwards, is posed within his life. The desire to suppress his lower appetites. That desire, and only restrict it where Allah permitted for him to express it. So this is someone that had beauty, and of course this goes between men and women and men. The quality here is what is being emphasized on. She had beauty, and she had reputation, due to her family, due to her wealth. She had all of this. But perhaps stronger than all of that, the greatest factor which made it so difficult, that made it such a hot situation for him to resist, and in exchange he didn't have to deal with the heat of the Day of Judgment, he will receive Allah's shade. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, imra'atun da'athu. The woman was the one inviting. Because many a times, perhaps we can even argue most of the time, those who do not commit zina, there are so many that do, but those who do not commit zina, they don't abstain, they don't resist just for Allah Azza wa Jal. They could resist because of some sort of emotional or psychological resistance. He doesn't like to feel rejected. A man does not like to feel that from a woman. And also, many a times, there's another factor, and that's the social factor. A person just doesn't like to get caught. That's what stops them. As for not doing it for Allah Azza wa Jal, this is extremely rare. Usually it's some sort of worldly factor that stops those who actually stop. You know, Ibn Ashur rahimahullah, he even argues that this is a Quranic concept. He says, why is it that in the Quran, when Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about the zunah, those who fall into adultery, those who fall into zina, he says, az-zaniyatu waz-zani fajlidu. The woman who commits zina, fornication, and the man who commits zina, then this is their punishment, flog them. But when it came to theft, when it came to stealing, Allah Azza wa Jal began with the man first, and He said, وَالسَّارِقُ السَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ. The man who steals and the woman who steals. So why the reversal in the order? He says perhaps the reason, this is a very beautiful subtlety. He says perhaps the reason is because most of the people that participate in theft are men. So this is mostly something that is very perilous, very dangerous. It requires, climbing and running, and sometimes you're going to have to kill somebody if you get caught, and it's more prominent in men. He says, and as for zina, it's not that zina is more prominent in women, but the greater determining factor in whether or not zina will happen, he says, is the woman. How so? Some people may think he is saying, or that Islam says, and this is very alien, this comes from other religions, that the woman is the root of all evil, or the concept of every downfall of man is caused by... This is not Islamic at all. This comes from a completely different tradition that people might have assumed is the same exact perspective in Islam, and it's not. Because in Islam, the man and the woman have identical punishment in zina, and identical in punishment if they accuse someone of zina. And if 4 men would testify against one woman that she committed zina, and their stories don't match up, they all get punished and she goes free. And of course, all of this happens in a judicial system, obviously, in qada. But the point being, he's not saying she is more to blame for zina. He's saying she is the determining factor in zina, because the guy already has his mind made up anyway. He's just waiting for her to give him the green light. The man does not have the ability to resist unless there are other factors, meaning ordinarily, people without the fear of Allah in their life, without taqwa. I'm sure I'm not going to get caught. I'm sure she's inviting, there's no resistance from her, and either she's not going to reject me. She will determine whether the zina happens or not. And perhaps this is why Allah began with her, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is huge. This is Islam recognizing reality. That the reason why there are these barriers, why there is so much fear that should keep people from allowing these appetites to take control of their life, is because of an inherent weakness that is more prominent in men. And so when the Prophet ﷺ, for example, says in the hadith of Usama radiallahu anhu, Bukhari and Muslim, ما تركت فتنة بعدي هي أضر على الرجال من النساء. I have not left a temptation, a trial, a challenge after me, after I go, that will remain with my ummah, that is more difficult, or he says more harmful on the men than women. It's because of an inherent weakness in the man. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla, when He spoke about zina and tawbah from zina, and the guidelines for gender interactions, He explained why in Surah An-Nisa, and He said, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, because the human being is weak. Many of the early Muslims, they said that they understood, يَذْهَبُ عَقْلُهُ عِنْدَ النِّسَاء, because his mind, his judgment is impaired when he has free reign in front of the opposite gender. And so, for you to think you can play with this fire without getting burned, this is the slippery slope that has taken so many throughout human history, in this ummah, outside of this ummah. You know, even our children or our youth or our peers, they are criticized a great deal, openly and like implicitly, with gestures growing up. How don't you date? You have to just try it out. Like they refuse the notion that this is so dangerous, that this is playing with fire. They say, how are you going to get married if you don't date? If you don't have some sort of nearness, some sort of a relationship. And this, to be honest, is the most difficult, besides the khutbah, but it's the most difficult argument to accept if you're in your right mind. But if you're governed by this leaning, which is natural, and you don't have enough fear of Allah to wake you up, you will be susceptible to it. Because how ridiculous is it to say that dating will ensure a good marriage? You know, some of the journals, I believe it was the University of Pittsburgh Journal mentioned that less than 1% of people actually go and reach a point where they marry their first love, their first date. Right? So how is that going to help anybody? You know what that means? That means you fall in love with someone, and there's more than a 99% chance that you're going to go your separate ways. You're going to hate each other after. Which means you're going to let go of each other's secrets, you're going to try to get vengeance against one another, and all of that. And then let us say we are insane enough to bank on the 1%. What is the percentage of marriages in this culture that lasts? Depending on where you are, you're talking between 50 and 60% of the marriages fail anyway. So where is the fruit of this dating process? How does it even work? Rather, this is something that was dictated by opening the floodgates on these desires, by just letting it go and releasing it without bounds. Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, do not come near it, you will get burned. When He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, He did not say don't do it. He said do not come anywhere near this. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا. It's a heinous thing. It's a wild beast. You know, don't come near it, as if, you know, when they say don't come near the animal's cage, the animal sticks his arm out. It's as if if you come within the vicinity, you will be pulled in. You will not be able to resist if you get close. And then He says, وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. And this is an ugly, ugly, ugly road. Once you fall into it, it will not stop there. And so for a person to be in denial about this and say, yeah, this is fine, but just so long as it doesn't get to that, you are belying yourself. You know, when Allah Azza wa Jalla says that Yusuf alayhi salam says, وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. This is Yusuf alayhi salam's wisdom and his fear of Allah. That he's saying, oh Allah, if you don't turn this away from me, if you don't protect me from this. He wasn't coming close, it was chasing after him. And he's saying still, despite that, if you don't protect me, I will fall. I will asbu ilayhin. I will fall to them. I will fall to their invite. The invite of these women that are trying to seduce me. وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And I will be of the foolish. Because certainly someone is foolish if they think they can do it on their own. They can play with fire and not get burned. Or you're certainly foolish of the jahilin if you think your only problem is that no one's going to find out. If you think getting caught is the only problem, right? Because at the end of the day, let us say the husband of the woman, Imra'at al-Aziz, if al-Aziz would have caught them, had he given in, al-Aziz would have caught them. The worst that's going to happen is he's going to kill him. That's the worst that's going to happen. And for many people, death is a relief. It will just take away his dunya. But what happens when someone severs you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What happens when you develop a mindset where it's okay so long as the people don't catch me? And you're completely oblivious to the danger, the possibility of Allah Azza wa Jal catching you. But let us say we are in the situation of Yusuf alayhi salam. To take it one step further. Because this is the fitna of our times. Every age had its fitna. Perhaps this is the fitna of our time. This al-hawas al-jinsi as some call it. Or hypersexuality that we have in our age. What if you're resisting, you're not playing games, you're staying 100 meters back, and it comes chasing after you? Because that is the age we live in, isn't it? You know, wallahi, when you read the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that before the sa'ah, before the last hour of this dunya, يرفع العلم ويوضع الجهل ويكثر الزنا ويكثر القتل. But right before the hour, knowledge will be uplifted, and ignorance will become settled, and zina will become proliferated, pushed in every direction, so open, obvious, available. And killing will be everywhere. Wallahi, you see today's age and you read that hadith and you say, Ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. You really are the messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. There are no four more depicting elements of today's age than those four. People being killed, not knowing why they're killed or why they're killing. Zina like you would not imagine. Ignorance and the upliftment of knowledge and the ABCs of common sense, forget revelation and religion. All of that being challenged, he foretold this, alayhi salatu wassalam. So what do you do when you find yourself in this situation? Where you're running away from it, but the women in the age, for example, or the men, they are chasing, throwing themselves at you from every single direction. At school, at work, in the restaurants, online, in your pockets. My mother comes to me. My mother doesn't sign up for coupons or go on websites or people. They grab your email address and they send you things. And she came to me and said to me, I found invitations, things coming on certain applications. I could not believe it. I could not believe that people see this stuff. People are invited to these things. So what do you do in this situation? When you run from it as best you can, you're not just saying, I'm going to stop at zina, because that'll never happen. You're not just saying, I'll have a casual relationship. You're not saying, I won't touch. You're not saying, I won't be alone. You're saying, I'm going to lower my gaze like Allah told me. I'm not even going to look. I'm not even going to look. But it still comes your way. It's still found accessible to you, and you're inclined. Brothers and sisters, move up a little bit, because we have a big crowd today. Of youngsters, mind you. This was completely unplanned, by the way. Apparently there's no school today. Alhamdulillah, we need to be real here. People need to hear it. What happens when this desire is so accessible like never before? And you find yourself inclined to it, because to be in denial that I can have, and I'm not going to become inclined, that's also insanity, right? Allah Azza wa Jal says about Yusuf alayhi salam, and about the solution, what to do. He says, وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And he was inclined to her, and were it not for the fact that he saw the sign of his Lord, were it not for the fact that his iman, his faith, his hayat, his honest shame, his taqwa, his fear of Allah flared, he would have, had it not, because this is reality. It's not like there was something wrong with him and so he didn't desire. Allah's saying he was perfectly normal, perfectly human, perfectly manly. He had this, were it not for the sign of Allah that he was able to see. Why was he able to see it? Why did he find external help? It was external help that Allah stepped in and protected him from this. Because he had a balance with Allah. He had a record, an account with Allah Azza wa Jal. Because Allah says in the very next words, in that same ayah, why did he see that flare? قَالَ كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. This is how we divert from him. We did it. We turned away from him as-su'a wal-fahsha, evil and indecency. Why? إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Because he was of our servants that were chosen. You know, mukhlas means you devote yourself to Allah. Mukhlas is when Allah chooses you. Mukhlas means you're sincere. You choose Allah as the aim behind your actions. Mukhlas is when Allah chooses you to protect you, to purify, to make you one of His close slaves. And these go hand in hand. When someone devotes himself to Allah, he is inviting Allah's protection. He's inviting Allah's aid in his life. But when a person does not have this relationship with Allah, this devotion to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, where is he going to find the help from? If he insisted not to invite it into his life, if she insisted not to do this, subjecting herself or himself to this time and time again, if a person is not praying on time, if a person is not devoting himself to Allah's boundaries, recognizing them and observing them, if they're not doing this, then how can Allah Azza wa Jal, how in terms of fairness, not in terms of ability, how can Allah guide a person that is not asking for it? Protect a person that says, I can do it on my own. It won't happen. Yusuf alayhi salam said, I'm going to fall. And then he said, Innahu Rabbi. When a person invites Allah, then the most vicious, aggressive desire inside you, whatever it may be, you can overcome it. Whether it's greed, whether it's anger, whether it is the desire for food, for drink, but the most aggressive desire for most of us is this desire we're talking about today. Sure, the most base desire, necessary desire for a human being is food and drink. Because without food and drink, you die very fast. And people can go years on end without marriage. So it's not the most necessary. But if you get close to it, it becomes the hardest to resist. But even that one, when you come close to Allah, there will be ease in resisting it. He will not let you fight that fight alone. And this was the man that the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about in this hadith. He was invited and he was able not just to say, no, I fear Allah. Back off. Not going to happen. He doesn't just deter her. He declares his principle. Right? He declares his principles. Like Yusuf alayhi salam once did. He said, Innahu Rabbi, ma'ad Allah, the refuge of Allah I seek. He is my Lord. Ahsana mathwai. He has taken care of me. Innahu la yuflih. He will never allow to succeed someone that betrays him. I can't do this. Because if Yusuf alayhi salam would have said to her, I can't, we could get caught, or I can't, you're married, she'll say, I'll divorce my husband for you. Right? But he declares it from the get. It's impossible, not going to happen. And all throughout the history of this ummah, there are people that capitalized on this. Rabi' ibn Khuthaym, rahimahullah, a beautiful personality in the Tabi'een of Al-Kufa. When Abdullah al-Mas'ud came to Al-Kufa and he saw Rabi' how much he fasted and prayed at night and devoted himself to Allah, he said to him, had the messenger of Allah, and if this isn't like a testimony, I don't know what is. He said, if the messenger of Allah had met you, he would have loved you. Alayhi salatu wassalam. And so some of the people that were resentful of Rabi', spiteful, because if you exist, holding to your principles, you make, by contrast, people look bad that aren't. And so people don't like others that are playing by the rules if they're breaking the rules. It makes them conflicted. And that, by the way, is the reason why believers need to always come into the masajid and always need to keep good company. Because you will see where you need to pick up the slack. You will see by comparison where you're falling behind. That conflicted feeling is good for you. Don't run away from it. And so these people didn't. These people wanted him to be like them. And so they went to the most beautiful woman that they could find, that they used to purchase. She was a baghi. She worked in prostitution. And they said to her, here's 1,000 dinar, a fortune. She said, for what? They said, to get from a Rabi' one qubla. That's it. She said, I'll give you much more than that. And she went to him and said to him, I have a question, I need a fatwa. And when he did that, she revealed herself in a corner of the street, revealed herself to him. And so he screamed at her. He said, what, are you insane? He said to her, Kayfa biki, like what would you be like if you catch a fever tonight? And it changes that beauty of yours and disfigures you. And how many people are one sneeze or one fever away from looking like a completely different person the next time you see them? He said, what will it be like when Malakul Maut, the angel of death, comes to you and he grabs you by your Habl al-Warid, your jugular vein? And what will it be like when Munkar and Nakir, the two angels in the grave, sit you up to interrogate you? And he kept yelling at her like this until the sincerity of his words shook her from within and she ran off. And she had made a beautiful tawbah, repented to Allah Azza wa Jal, and she became known as Abidat al-Kufa, the most devout worshipper of al-Kufa. And those that had paid her the money used to say, we sent her to a Rabi' to ruin a Rabi', and the Rabi' ruined her for us. He ruined our business. And likewise, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa al-Sahmi, rahimahullah, when he was captured by al-Furs, captured by the army of the Persia in one of the campaigns during the Khilafah of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, they tried everything to get him to leave his religion. Because they were told this is one of the remaining people from the first-hand companions of this man Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And they would admit women upon him. And they did this for centuries actually. But this was the first generation Sahaba. They saw this, they would admit women to take care of their wounds and tend to them until you build an affinity, and then she would offer herself to him on the condition that he become one of theirs. He become of their religion. And so when they did this to him, she tried everything and she walked out. And she said to them, I don't even know if this man knows that I'm a woman. He didn't twitch, didn't turn, nothing. He showed no signs, no hope in this. And they tried to throw him in a burning cauldron of oil to boil him to death, if you will. And that didn't break him. And so the man didn't want to kill him, it would be a waste. He wanted to humiliate him. So the Qa'id, the commander of the Persians, said, I'll accept from you to kiss my head and I'll set you free. That's it, I'll settle for that. Kiss my head in front of everybody, glorify me and I'll set you free. And so he said, only if you promise to release all of my brothers, the rest of the Muslims. And there were about 80 of them that were taken captive after that battle. And so he agreed and he was able to release, emancipate these 80 plus people. And when they got back to Medina, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh said, it is everyone's duty to get up and kiss this man's head for what he did. He was able to resist. Allah liberates you from being tied down by these things that will fail you. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ونبيه ورسوله. We must understand that no matter what age we live in, how difficult the challenges are, Allah Azza wa Jal has given us everything that we need to get out safely. And He gave us a very simple formula that we always repeat and must memorize. فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاعُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبَعُوا الشَّهَوَاتِ فَسَوْفَ يَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا. The nations before you were destroyed because they allowed the prayer to fall apart. And so they began following their desires. When you don't lower your head for Allah, your head will be lowered for so many other worthless things. And you think about, wallahi, our children growing up, wallahi, we feel so bad for them sometimes. The things they see. I had an 8-year-old come up to me on Friday saying, I like a boy. And I don't know what to do. And I know it's not hormones, it's just conditioning. She's told that. Someone called my attention over the weekend to some ridiculous series on YouTube that has hundreds of millions of views. Just some homemade ridiculousness about relationships between Spider-Man and little Elsa from Frozen. 2 teenagers acting out the scenes. Little Elsa's pregnant, Spider-Man's cheating on her with Spider-Girl. Oh, this is just insanity. And then when you add to that we go through what we go through and there's no quality, maybe there isn't even consistency in our salah and confidence to stand our principles when we're faced with this societal pressure. And then there's movies. I had a girl here in Pennsylvania who came to me right after she tried to kill herself. And her parents don't know, or at least her father didn't know. Because she got stuck in a relationship and she's telling me this long story about how they couldn't get married in the end because he's a Hindu and she's a Muslimah. And so she gave him, her diary as an apology that she has to walk away. And then he tried to kill himself, so she tried to kill herself. And this is the movies we watch when we're young, right? I told her, do you watch? I asked her a certain kind of, I told her, do you watch Bollywood? These types of movies, Indian love stories. She said, all the time, I was raised on them. Can you imagine inviting 2 people into your living room? Parents, think about this. We cannot just badger the children and expect them to get thrown into the ocean with their hands tied and swim. Would you invite 2 people to kiss in your living room on a couch? What's the difference in the small piece of glass between you and them? It's a movie screen. And then a guy runs away with a girl in some movie, and your heart is racing because the father is chasing the two of them. And right before the father kills him, like he jumps out of the hotel room or whatever it is, and you're just like, you just sided with the zani, you just sided with the fornicator. You identified with shaitan in that moment. You normalized this. And you know how rated R, now it's PG-13, and the standards keep changing. We all know this. You mix all of that together, and it's just, what have we done? And so, the issue is not just zina, the issue is not just pornography, the issue is many of the things that we do on a daily basis make us think it's okay. And wallahi, the worst of it is not anything here in the dunya. I'm already 3 minutes over. Our Prophet ﷺ was shown 6 scenes from the qabr in the grave after Munkar and Nakir. He said, and I seen men and women that had no clothing. يَأْتِيهِمُ اللَّهَبُ مِنَ الْأَسْفَلِ, that were in an oven with a tight top and a wide bottom. And the fire would drive them, would lift them upwards, ضَوْضَوْ, and they would scream hysterically. And just when they think they're going to get out, the fire lessens again. And it repeats this until the day of judgment. Then it may get worse. It continues like this until the day of judgment. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam. And you know that in Surah An-Nur, when it talks about the light of guidance of Allah that He places in the hearts, that's the same surah that speaks about lowering the gaze and marrying early and wearing hijab and not taking permission before you enter the doors of your family, your parents, all of this. It talks about zina, it talks about qadf, all of this. Why? It's interconnected. If you allow a person to become like this, if we subject ourselves or our family to this, we are no longer human. If you don't learn to ghudd al-basar, as they say, your eyesight lower it, you will have no basira, you will have no insight here. You will not be able to invite the light of Allah in your heart. And nothing will satisfy you with that. Don't you know the most famous women on earth, that everyone is jealous of their husbands? All these husbands have cheated on that woman. And the list I just saw recently. All these women accuse their husband of cheating. It will not satisfy you. It is a lie. And so our Prophet ﷺ is saying, do yourself a favor before we leave. This is our 5th of those shaded in Allah's shade. Don't burn yourself here. And then the heat will get turned up there by just inviting Allah into your life. Understanding that. Let it be on His terms, His lifestyle, not yours. Nothing else will work. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكيها أنت خير من زكاها اللهم اغفر لنا هزلنا وجدنا وخطأنا وعمدنا وكل ذلك عندنا اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من منكرات الأخلاق والأهواء والأدواء والأعمال اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن والعجز والكسل والجبن والبخل وضلع الدين وقهر الرجال اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم وارحم الأموات وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.